Just like with every show, there were a couple of plot lines that people just didn't like in Stranger Things. But unlike other TV shows, Stranger Things actually justified their bad plots as the seasons progressed and showed why they were necessary. So in this video, we're gonna get right into the show's most hated storylines and how they were justified. Starting with not your average love triangle. Every Stranger Things fan hated Max when she first appeared in season 2 because it seemed like the show was starting to move in a more generic direction. People loved Stranger Things because it was like the only teen show that wasn't focusing on romance all the time. Instead, it was just a plus. But when Max appeared, it seemed like they were going to create a whole love triangle situation with Eleven being the jealous girl. After all, she was the only other girl in the group. But that's not how it all went down. Instead of pinning them against each other, the show took a different approach. They made Eleven and Max become best friends by season 3, which was not expected at all, especially since they started off hating each other. Elle thought Mike would like her instead and treated Max terribly, but they started liking each other when Eleven realized that neither Max nor Mike was into each other. They showed each other that boyfriends weren't everything. The moment Eleven met Mike, he'd been the center of her life and basically obsessed with him. With Max around, she realized she didn't need to be with Mike 24/7. Slowly, fans came to love their dynamic, and it's clear how much Eleven needed a female companion like Max around. Up next, bad influence. Max's life was very hard. Her whole family's messed up. Her mom's basically absent from her life. Her stepfather is physically and verbally abusive, and her stepbrother is always angry. Because of the situation they are in, things only got worse when she had to witness Billy getting murdered by the Mind Flayer. Billy himself was also a victim of abuse, and his relationship with Max made it seem like he was starting to follow in his father's footsteps. But right before he died, he told Max, "I'm sorry." Max and Eleven's friendship is also pretty controversial. It's only been growing throughout the seasons, but people don't think Eleven should hang out with Max at all because she seems like a bad influence. This does make sense since she even manipulated Elle at times. Elle, on the other hand, grew up in a lab and had no idea how things worked. She was extremely naive and took every piece of advice Max gave her, even if it was bad. But in the end, Max was like 14 when all of this was happening. Of course, she wasn't gonna give Eleven good relationship advice at that age. When they grew up, Max taught Eleven to speak up and draw her boundaries, something she didn't even know she could do. Max reminds Eleven that her relationship isn't the most important thing in her life, and there are other things to life than Mike. Eleven appreciates Max a lot for everything she's taught her, and made sure to let her know by literally bringing her back from the dead. The scene was a beautiful moment, although we don't really know if Max will actually make it. Moving on, these storylines could actually beat Vienna. Right now, everyone's wondering if Max will actually wake up or not. Vecna's power is fueled by pain and suffering, and he has plenty of time to leech while the rest of the characters mourn her terrible condition. Right now, we're assuming that Max's subconscious is still with Vecna in the Upside Down, but her body's been left behind because Eleven interfered. But this could actually help them win the fight against Vecna. Eleven could track Max's thoughts, where all her good memories can be used to weaken and defeat Vecna, and possibly even save Max from whatever nightmare she's currently in. Eleven saving best friends Max will end up becoming the important Stranger Things storyline. It'll bring the whole teen drama storyline to a full circle. Stranger Things, all upside-down creatures ranked by their power. First up, at number 5 is Vecna. Out of all the creatures from the Upside Down, the most powerful of them all is Vecna, without a doubt. He's been behind everything this whole time, even though he only appeared in this season. Vecna, or Henry Creel, is a human who became a monster after being forced into the Upside Down by Eleven. But it seems like he managed to take control of the Upside Down, because everything moves according to his command. He seeks out victims he can mentally torment, and feeds off of their pain and trauma, then murders them in probably the worst possible way. Henry was the first supernatural child to be subjected to the same test as Eleven in Hawkins' lab, and so he was named Number 1. He started his murder spree when he was just a kid, and killed the rest of the children in Hawkins' lab years later. He comes back as Vecna and murders 4 victims so he can carry out the Upside Down's plan to take over the world, beginning with Hawkins. Vecna is extremely difficult to defeat, and might never even be beaten, and Eleven is the only one who might be able to stop him. Up next, at number 4 is the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer wasn't always Vecna in disguise. When Henry Creel first found him back in 1979, it kind of looked like a storm, but with real body parts and no consciousness. Then he took over the monster and tried to take over Hawkins, with Will Byers being his very first victim. Although the Mind Flayer has little control over its own existence, when someone takes control of it, like Henry Creel did, it becomes nearly invincible. It can control just about all of the Upside Down species and form an army whenever it wants. It returns in Season 3 as the Spider Monster to take over more Hawkins people again and carry out its wicked intentions. The Mind Flayer orders the other monsters to carry out Vecna's goal of annihilating mankind and allowing the Upside Down to take over the actual world. Moving on at number 3 is Demogorgons. Stranger Things' first monster, the Demogorgon, was the first creature from the Upside Down to show up in Hawkins in Season 1. It's the monster that started it all. The Demogorgon is a huge humanoid with a scary gaping mouth instead of a face. It is extremely difficult to kill because of its speed and strength. Eleven has the ability to use her telekinesis to fight the monster, but she is also part of the reason it arrived in Hawkins in the first place. They have various phases of life and are considered to be aggressive at all stages, with the exception of Dart, who trusted Dustin. They get more and more violent and only want human flesh when they attain their full form. They're powerful enough to kill practically anybody in their path. In the first season, only 11 and her psychokinetic talents were able to stop them. Since then, they found some of their weaknesses, like fire, but they've also gained some strengths, such as limited psychokinetic powers and portal opening abilities. What's worse is that they can even be trained to be even more destructive, like the Russians demonstrated in Season 4. Coming up at number 2 is the Spider Monster. The Spider Monster is technically just a few remains of the Flayed and acts as a physical body for the Mind Flayer. This monster was specifically designed to kill Eleven and her friends to take over the world. Since almost all of the monster's power comes primarily from the Mind Flayer, it's almost impossible to beat even Eleven. Ultimately, Eleven wasn't able to defeat the creature. It was just too strong. If she'd tried any harder, she risked killing herself. Billy Hargrove realized this and decided to do what needed to be done, and that was sacrificing himself, so Eleven and her friends had the opportunity to escape. When he did this, he was able to temporarily cut off its connection from the hive mind. This let Eleven finally close the gate that gave that spider monster its powers from the Mind Flayer, which killed it almost instantly. If it wasn't for Billy's sacrifice, we probably wouldn't have made it to Season 4. Finally, at number 1 is the Flayed. The Flayed was the very thing the Mind Flayer was made of, so you can only imagine how powerful it is. The Flayed actually refers to all the possessed people and animals of Hawkins in 1985, which also possessed Billy Hargrove as one of their own. They weren't really considered that scary because they only served as spies to the Mind Flayer. But once these guys took control of your brain, there was no going back. Will was very lucky that his friends were able to get him out of the subconscious, but the same couldn't be said for many others. That's a wrap for today's video. Do you think the show justified these plot lines? Make sure to let us know in the comments below. As always, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one!